I decided that I would promise myself that I would stand up here and do it. And in fact, I promised one or two people that are sat here tonight that I would come and do it. Because, you know, at the end of the day, you're not exactly scary, are you?
No.
Yeah, well, a promise is a promise. Jephthah, what can I tell you about Jephthah? Well, he was an ordinary kid. In fact, he was actually a little bit extraordinary and an awful lot ordinary and quite a lot like you, except not quite so scary. And in fact, everything was okay for Jephthah except for his brothers. You see, Jephthah's mum wasn't his dad's wife. In fact, Jephthah's mum worked the night shift in the local town, which was strictly adults only. And he didn't mind that, but his brothers did. Because his brother's mum was his dad's wife. And every day they would say to him, Jephthah, get out, we don't want you. Jephthah, you're not one of us, get out. Jephthah, get out, don't you think you're getting any of this inheritance, mate? And it was, Jephthah, get out, Jephthah, get out, Jephthah, get out. So eventually he got out. So he took his anger and his resentment and he made his way to the mountains. Now this was the place that all the rejects and the outcasts went. In fact, this was a place of scary people. And it wasn't long before Jephthah had to take his fear and take his anger and realise that they made really formidable partners. In fact, he got so good at fighting that the people that lived there didn't want to fight him anymore. They wanted to follow him. And as he grew and he matured and he became a young man, he became a man of integrity and of promise. He always kept his word. If Jephthah said, I'm going to go get food, food arrived. If Jephthah said, don't worry, I'll sort it, sorted he did. And if Jephthah said, welcome, then welcome you were. Everybody who lived there who had no family found a family with Jephthah. And it wasn't long before they all realised that it was time to settle down. Time to be law-abiding citizens. So that's what they did. They got themselves a village and they got themselves a wife, and Jephthah got himself a farm, and he had some sheep and he had some chickens and he had some goats. I have to tell you, one of them, Miss Pal, the goat, she went everywhere with him. She followed him like a shadow. And every time he went away from the village, as soon as he returned, she was there. So was the cockerel, but he was never quite sure whether the cockerel was welcoming him home or the cockerel was trying to shove him off his patch. And the world was lovely, and Jephthah was happy and content, especially when one day oh, she was beautiful. She had hair the colour of a raven's wing. Her eyes were so big and dark, she looked like you could sink into them. And her voice, oh, she couldn't help but make you smile. There weren't any more children arrived, but that was fine. Jephthah was happy with what he'd got. He was content. Life was good. But if you've ever noticed that life has a habit of when you think that, and that day happened for Jephthah when a messenger arrived. You see, his reputation had gone far and wide. Now, the Israelites and the Ammonites had been at war for years, decades. They'd got this towns, and then they wanted them towns back, and then they wanted them towns again, and it was the turn of the Israelites to go and fight. But this generation of Israelites were pretty pathetic. And they needed somebody who was a good soldier to go and fight for them and to train their men. Now the irony of this situation wasn't lost on Jephthah. Here they were, his brothers included, begging him to go back. So it was with some smug satisfaction that he gathered his men around him and off they went. He was welcomed back. When he left, he'd been a rejected youth. He returned as a respected soldier. Oh, everybody wanted to see him, even his brothers. But he looked around and they needed all the help they could get. So he sent his men too. Some did some training, some sorted out the weapons, and he decided he would try and go and do some negotiations. So he sent his proposal, and they came back with their answer. And he sent his proposal, and they came back with the answer. And it became very clear very soon that he had a no-deal scenario. So fighting was all he could do. It got to the night before the battle. The sun went down over the horizon, and the men lay down to sleep. But you could feel the tension in the air. There was excitement, there was fear, there was anticipation. And Jephthah, he just couldn't sleep. Go over this plan and send that in there, and have they got the weapons right, and do they know what they're doing, and can I do this? They're all putting a lot of pressure on my shoulders. I know what I'll do. Father God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, give me this battle. You promise we are your chosen people and you will deliver us. But he still couldn't sleep. There was snoring over there. There was wriggling over there. There were smells everywhere. Father, God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, deliver us. Give our enemies into our hands. And I promise you, I will build you an altar. It will be a monument of thanksgiving to you, and the world will know that you are the God of the Israelites. In fact, I promise you that I will sacrifice the first thing that comes to meet me when I get home, because after all, everything belongs to you. Eventually the sleep came, and he got down. But it wasn't long before the sun came up over the mountains, and the men got up to fight. The battle started slowly at first, but by mid-afternoon the Ammonites were on the run, and by evening victory was theirs. And boy did they celebrate. By the time the sun went down, everybody was happy and joyful, and they couldn't wait to go tell the world what an amazing victory they'd had. So the next morning, Jephthah got up with his men, and with their bodies sore from the battle and their heads sore from celebrating, they set off back home. They went over the mountains and they got near to the village, and there was a fantastic clearing, just the spot for an altar. So he got his men involved, and they got the big stones for the bottom and the medium stones for the walls and the small stones for the gaps, and then they went and got the wood and everything. This is just right. This is what we're going to do to celebrate our victory. I've got my altar, I've got my wood, I'm ready. Let's see what the sacrifice is going to be. But you see, Jephthah wasn't ready. He wasn't ready for the raven-coloured hair that came over the horizon. And he wasn't ready for those deep, dark, soulful eyes that looked right through him. He wasn't ready. Jephthah's promise is a cautionary tale of that there can be no doubts. For it's not when and where you promise, but what you promise that counts.